Hello everybody, GZTV back with another video, and in this video we are going to be reviewing, we're going to be kind of discussing American Psycho. I don't think I've seen this beforehand, with Final Destination. That's another movie that came out in 2000, by the way. This movie came out in 2000. That's a pretty good year for movies. Talking about this, we're going to talk about Better Call Saul, and that's going to do it for the channel. I'm really liking the Madden content, so I'll probably do a grind stream tomorrow of playing Madden. I look a little sweaty, it's because I got a little heated today, so yeah. Let's get into the plot. Let's get into the critics. In 1987, Patrick Bateman, a young and wealthy New York City investment banker, spends most of his time dining at popular restaurants while keeping up appearances for his fiancée Evelyn Williams and his cycle of wealthy associates, most of whom he hates, and we're going to see that very soon. Patrick Bateman doesn't really like anybody else. He's really selfish, honestly. Like, he only cares about himself. He only wants to please himself, and having this girl with him, I guess, is like a boost of self-esteem to have a girl with him. I don't know. It's kind of a strange dynamic there. But yeah, at a business meeting, Bateman and his associates flaunt their business cards. I guess that was something that they did at the time. We're talking late 80s, and it really fits the 80s aesthetic, and it's so cool to see a 2000 movie fitting an 80s aesthetic in terms of what filter they used on their cameras. They might have even used an old camera. I don't know. It's a really good, well shot movie. It really is like an 80s slasher about a guy that just went insane. It was made 22 years ago. Enraged by the superiority of his colleague Paul Allen's card, Bateman confronts a homeless man in an alley at night and stabs him and stomps his dog to death. I think it was a cat, actually. No, it was a dog. Very, very disturbing. This didn't happen till actually a little bit into the film. It took a decent amount for us to build the character Patrick Bateman. He's very specific about things. He's like an intelligent man. That's what a lot of killers have been known as, is somewhat intelligent people. There are a couple exceptions, obviously, but Patrick Bateman in this story, he's a really smart dude, and he's really specific about things. He has a whole skin routine. He has a whole daily routine. And yeah, he's very, very specific about things. He's mad because someone has a better business card than him, and he takes his anger out on a homeless man and this dog. So yeah. Bateman and Allen, who mistake Bateman for another coworker. I don't know how that happened. I never really understood that while I was watching the movie. Make plans for dinner after a Christmas party. So it's the Christmas season, cold winters, man. Yeah. Bateman resents Allen for his affluent lifestyle and ability to obtain reservations at Dorsia, an exclusive restaurant that Bateman is unable to get into. He has to trick the people into getting him a reservation. He hangs the phone up on them, shows up, and he's reservation for Bateman, and he somehow gets a seat, probably because of how high class he is. A lot of jealousy, just spewing into rage for Patrick Bateman as you progress through the movie. He's wow, you can get Dorsia reservations? I'm pissed. Who gets pissed over stuff like that? Obviously, Patrick Bateman does. Bateman manipulates Allen into getting drunk, so he gives him a couple of drinks. They go out on a night in the town. They end up in his apartment. He lures Allen into his apartment and kills him with an axe whilst listening to Huey Lewis and the news. Very interesting stuff when he's killing his victims. Very interesting patterns portrayed by Patrick Bateman. He knows a lot about music. He's portraying his intelligence to his victims. It's so weird. He's such a weird, twisted person. And, he is pretty much representative of some actual serial killers, I'm sure, but yeah. Patrick goes into Allen's apartment and leaves a message on his answering machine, claiming that Allen has gone on a business trip to London to kind of cover up his disappearance. But we're going to find out soon that people do not believe Patrick one bit, that he went to London. And they don't have suspicions against him. They just know that something bad happened to Allen. Yeah, it's crazy. He's did you know da-da-da-da-da? He was talking about Whitney Houston. He was talking about Phil Collins. It was crazy. I don't know. After private investigator Donald Kimball interviews Bateman regarding Allen's disappearance, Bateman takes two prostitutes, Christy and Sabrina, to his apartment where they have sex before he tortures them and sends them on their way after paying them. So this is a sick fucking human. Again, taking his anger out on other people. Bateman's colleague, Lewis Carruthers, reveals a new business card. So Bateman tries to strangle him in the restroom of an expensive restaurant and finds he can't really do so. They're in public. He's got to keep a low profile here. Carruthers mistakes the attempt for a sexual advance and declares his love for Bateman, who panics and flees. He's like, my goodness, I don't want this. He's getting out of here. I don't know if he realized that Lewis was gay or anything like that, but that's really interesting, right? Let's see. What else? After murdering a model, Bateman invites his secretary Jean to dinner, suggesting that she meet him at his apartment for drinks before they go out to eat. And this is his killing ground, so she's probably not safe in this situation, but she has no idea. She finds Patrick Bateman to be a very charming, innocent, charismatic man, as do pretty much everyone else in the area that he's connected to do. Bateman plans to kill her with a nail gun, but desists after he receives a message from Williams on his answering machine. So Williams pretty much saves her life. Kimbo meets Bateman for lunch and tells him he is not a suspect in Alan's disappearance. He's like, don't worry, you're not a suspect. We're not going to falsely charge you of anything, even though he actually did it. He reveals that a colleague of Bateman's claims to have spotted Alan in London, calling the investigation into question. So now Bateman's kind of getting let off the hook here because someone saw him, but they keep mistaking each other for different co-workers. So that's kind of like the weird thing that's going on in their workplace, you know. Bateman is relieved, but becomes perturbed and begins to doubt himself. Like, will I get away with this? What am I doing? You know, like starting to question himself. Bateman brings Christie to Alan's apartment where he drugs his acquaintance Elizabeth before having sex with her and Christie. So he's like manipulating these women. He says that Christie is his cousin, and it's very sick to see that. Like, Elizabeth's probably like, what the hell? But they're drugged, so they obviously forget what happens. After Bateman kills Elizabeth, Christie runs, discovering multiple female corpses as she searches for an exit. It's very crazy. It's one of the craziest parts of the show, where he really goes off the deep end and really takes out his anger. It's crazy. Bateman chases her and drops a chainsaw on her as she flees down a staircase. That was insane. He dropped the chainsaw down the staircase, and when she was met at the bottom with it, it was one of the most badass scenes in this movie. I don't endorse murder or anything, but when it's in fictitious form, I gotta show some love to like how things are executed in this movie, and just the personality of Patrick Bateman's another big point. Afterwards, it just shows how smart he is. He's like running through the hall naked too. I don't know. Afterwards, Bateman breaks off his engagement with Williams, decides we're done. He humiliates her in the middle of the restaurant. As Bateman uses an ATM, he sees a cat, and built up anger, he's probably going to take his anger out on him. The ATM displays the text, "Feed me a stray cat," so it's just kind of his hallucinations, his temptations getting the best of him. So he prepares to shoot the cat. When a woman confronts him, he shoots her. So everybody that gets in his way, he's just going to kill them from now on. Pretty much becoming a mass murderer, mass shooter right here. A police chase ensues, but Bateman kills the officers and blows up a police car. Kind of unrealistic, kind of plot convenient here, but it was still pretty dope. Bateman kills 2 more people before hiding in his office. So he goes back to his work, and he's like shooting the receptionist and stuff. He calls his lawyer, Harold Carnes, and frantically leaves a confession claiming to have killed 20 to 40 people. I guess he wants to be a good person and confess. I don't know. It's kind of weird. The following morning, Bateman visits Alan's apartment to clean up the remains, but finds it vacant and for sale. People cleaned up the scene, and put it up for sale, because they know he's pretty much dead. The realtor tells him that the apartment does not belong to Alan before ordering him to leave, because if he gets in trouble for breaking into this apartment, he's going to get in trouble for the murder, because they're going to closely examine things he did. While Bateman goes to meet with his colleagues for lunch, Jean finds detailed drawings of murder and mutilation in Bateman's office journal, so now she kind of realizes that this guy was up to no good and that he was a psychopath. Bateman sees Carnes and mentions the phone message. He's like, look, I told you I killed people. And Carnes mistakes Bateman for another colleague and laughs off the confession as a joke. He's like, no way you would do that, right? But he did it. Bateman clarifies who he is and again confesses the murders, but Carnes says his claims are impossible since he recently had dinner with Allen in London. So he thought that he was Paul Allen. So weird. Such a weird part of the show. A confused Bateman returns to his friends. They muse whether Ronald Reagan is a harmless old man or hidden psychopath before discussing their dinner reservations. So that kind of brings up an idea with Patrick Bateman, like directly connected. Bateman, unsure if his crimes were imaginary, realizes he will never receive the punishment he desires, like he wants to be held accountable. But people are too stupid to realize that a murderer is among them. Yeah. Obviously a highly critically acclaimed. Very polarizing on first views. Its writing and performance from Christopher Bale was great. The violent nature of it was the criticism. Some positive reviews. It's a mean and lean horror comedy classic. I don't know how it's a comedy, but alright. It's a 6.3 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes with a 69% approval rating. If it falls short of the deadly satire of Bret Easton Ellis's novel, American Psycho still finds its own blend of horror and humor, thanks in part to a fittingly creepy performance by Christian Bale. Metacritic gave it a 6.4 out of 10, generally favorable. A D rating on CinemaScore, that's interesting. 3 out of 4 for Roger Ebert. He's a very iconic movie critic. Christian Bale is heroic in the way he allows the character to leap joyfully into despicability. There is no instinct for self-preservation here, and that is one mark of a good actor. The difficult truth is that the more viewers can model themselves after protagonist Bateman, the more they can distance themselves from the human reality, the slick violence that fills the screen, and take it all as some kind of cool joke, the more they are likely to enjoy this stillborn, pointless piece of work. After an hour of dissecting the 80s culture of materialism, narcissism, and greed, the movie begins to repeat itself. It becomes more grisly and surreal, but not too much more interesting, I guess. If anything, Bale is too knowing. He eagerly works within the constraints of the quotation marks Heron puts around his performance. Whenever Heron digs behind the glitzy surface in search of feelings that haven't been desensitized, the horrific and hilarious American Psycho can still strike a raw nerve. The toned-down brutality, the sexual content in comparison to the novel was interesting. The moment where Bateman spares his secretary is when this one-dimensional film blossoms like a flower. The film Joker and American Psycho, they're like anthems for incels. That's interesting. A- on Entertainment Weekly. By treating the book as raw material for an exuberantly perverse exercise in 80s nostalgia, Heron recast the go-go years as a template for the casually brainwashing consumer fashion image culture that emerged from them. She has made a movie that is really a parable today. Heron and co-screenwriter Guinevere Turner do understand the book, and they want their film to be understood as a period comedy of manners. It's pretty good. It's probably a top 20 horror movie of the 2000s. Christian Bale's disturbing, darkly hilarious turn as serial killer Manhattan businessman Patrick Bateman, a role that is, in hindsight, couldn't have been played by any other actor. At its best, the film reflects our own narcissism and the shallow American culture it was spawned from with piercing effectiveness. Much of this credit for this can go to director Mary Harron, whose off-kilter tendencies are a good complement to Ellis's unique style. American Psycho was a book that people didn't think needed to be turned into a movie. The medium of film demands answers, which would make the book infinitely less interesting. While the book attempted to add ambiguity to the events and to Bateman's reliability as a narrator, the film appeared to make them completely literal before confusing the issue at the very end. A lot of mixed feelings. The conception of Bateman as an unreliable narrator did not make an entirely successful transition from page to screen, but visually this movie looks good. Bateman's narration was so unreliable that even he, as the author of the book, didn't know if Bateman was honestly describing events that actually happened or if he was lying or even hallucinating. The film clarified the humor for audiences who mistook the novel's violence for blatant misogyny as opposed to the deliberately exaggerated satire that was intended. It gave the novel a second life in introducing it to new readers. The movie was okay. The movie was fine. Did it need to be made? Maybe. I don't know. I never even read the book, so I don't know. Sizable cult following, various social media platforms really pushed the agenda for this movie, so yeah, that's all I gotta say, man. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. As always, has been Jeezy TV, talking about your favorite TV shows. We have Better Call Saul up next, and then I'm probably going to go to dinner, go to a tournament, take a shower, watch some football, all that type of stuff. I'm pretty much done with school for the weekend. I just need to do some math before the weekend starts, so yeah. Again, just enjoy the rest of your guys' day. Thanks for